Welcome to Expand Your Empire, the podcast where women stop deferring wealth and start building financial power. I'm Amanda Taylor, investor, strategist, and disruptor of outdated money rules. It's time to own your worth, grow your assets, and build a legacy that lasts.
So obviously, I talk to a lot of women about money, a lot. And I've noticed a pattern. The moment investing comes up, the moment I start talking about portfolios or asset strategy or compounding, somebody says it. I'm not good at math. And then they check out. They'll smile. They smile politely, they nod, and then somewhere in their head, they've already decided that this is not for them, because if math is required and they are not a math person, then building wealth must be somebody else's lane. So I want to address this directly, and I want to do it before we go anywhere else today. You don't need math to build wealth. And I'm not being cute, I'm being literal. You need to be able to, yes, add and subtract. You need to be able to understand that more going out than coming in is a problem, and you need to be able to follow a framework. But that's it. Everything else, the actual math, there are tools and advisors and accountants and calculators for that. You're not going to be doing long division to build your investment portfolio. You're going to be making decisions. And decisions require clarity and not calculus. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines of your own financial future because you've convinced yourself that the math would get you, I need you to release that story. It was never the real reason. The real reason is that nobody explained it to you in a language that felt like it was for you. But that's what this entire show is for. And today we are finishing our series. So welcome back to Expand Your Empire. I am Amanda Taylor, and this is our final episode in the From Paychecks to Portfolio series. And I want to take a minute to honor the journey because it has been one. In episode 1, we talked about why your income isn't building wealth. That was the whole point of the episode, to name something that a lot of high-earning women feel but can't really explain. You're making money, real money, but at the end of the year or at the end of a really good quarter, you look around and you can't quite find it. It went somewhere. That somewhere is usually taxes or lifestyle or expenses that just crept up as the income crept up. And that motion looks like progress, but it's never building anything permanent. So income is not wealth. That's the whole thesis. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back. Seriously, this whole series was designed in order, and the foundation matters. So in episode 2, that one came out of a speaking engagement that I did at the University of Hawaii, where after I got off stage, I had a woman come up to me and say something. In episode 2, we talk about the thing that happens when you want financial security and financial freedom, but some part of you is also terrified of money, of wanting too much, of being seen as someone who prioritizes money. We talked about what happens when that fear, it doesn't stay in your head, but it leaks into your structure, into your cash flow and your decisions and the way you manage control. Now, control was the whole point of that episode, because if you can't predict what's coming in and going out, you can't build from it. You're just managing anxiety, and you can't build wealth from a short-term emotional state. Now, episode 3, the one just before this one, was about ownership. We talked about a lot of different ways to get into it, whether it's real estate, the stock market, business equity, because at some point you have to stop funding your lifestyle with your income and start funding assets with it. That is the shift from earning to owning, from what you produce to what you hold. Now today we're going into the multiplier layer, and that's where the long game actually starts. Now this is not the version they sell you in the headline, not the make your money work for you with no further explanation. This isn't an overnight version. It's not a version where someone shows you a screenshot of returns and a Lamborghini. This is a real version. It's coordinated. It's one where your assets, they're not random. Your strategy is not reactive, and your next move, it's not based on whatever opportunity happened to cross your Instagram feed this week. So the first thing that I need to distinguish is the difference between accumulation and multiplication, because they sound like the same thing and they are not. Accumulation means you have more things. Now the multiplication means that the things you own are working together to create more value, more income, more leverage, more protection, more options. So let's make it concrete. A rental property is accumulation. Now, a rental property connected to tax strategy, financing strategy, entity structure, estate planning, and reinvestment plan, that is multiplication. A brokerage account is accumulation. Now, a brokerage account with clear contribution rule, a rebalancing strategy, an income goal, tax awareness, and a retirement timeline, that is multiplication. Your business is accumulation if it only pays you when you work. It becomes multiplication when it produces cash flow, it builds equity value, it funds investments, it reduces your tax exposure, and it can operate without you standing in the middle of it every single day. So you see the difference. It's not about how many things you have. It is about whether the things you have are talking to each other, whether they have a job, whether they're just moving you somewhere on purpose or just existing. And a lot of us have assets that are just existing, and we have been calling that investing. Now, it's better than nothing, but here's the trap that I see most often. And I say this with full compassion because I have been in this trap and I understand exactly why this feels so logical. Most women think multiplication starts when they have more income. Now, when I make more, I will invest more. When I have more margin, I will create the plan. When the business is more stable, I will look at the strategy. When I have more time, I will finally learn the thing. None of those statements are crazy. They make total sense, but here's what actually happens. More income without a multiplication system just creates more movement. That means more expenses, more tax exposure, more complexity, more decisions, and a lot more pressure. And that's why a woman can have a 7-figure business and still feel like she's behind. The income grew, the structure did not. The money has more places to go, but none of them were chosen on purpose. So I've had this conversation with business owners who look incredibly successful from the outside. The revenue is real, the clients are real, the reputation is real. And then they sit down with me and then they say something like, I feel like I should have more to show for this by now. They don't have a revenue problem. They have a multiplication problem. And I want you to write this down or say it out loud or tattoo it somewhere tasteful. More money does not automatically multiply. More money only magnifies the system it enters. If the system is leaky, the money leaks faster. If the system is uncoordinated, more money creates more chaos. But if the system is strong, the money multiplies. So before we talk about the multipliers, I need you to release the idea that you have to wait for more before you can start building the system. The system is what you build first with what you already have, whatever that is. So this is the core of what I want to get to, the 4 multipliers. And these are not abstract concepts. They're levers that actually exist, that are actually available to you, and that most people never fully use because nobody just lays them out clearly, or because they were too busy assuming that they needed to be better at math first. Now, multiplier number 1 is compounding. Now, you've heard of it. It gets tossed around a lot, and I want to talk about it anyway because the way people usually explain it makes it sound like magic. And it's not magic, although Albert Einstein called it the 8th wonder of the world because it is. But it's just math plus time plus consistency. Compounding is what happens when your return starts earning a return. You invest $100, it earns $10. Now you have $110 invested. Next time it earns 10%, you earn then 11 something, then more, and it keeps going, except it accelerates as it goes. The longer it runs, the faster it compounds. But here's the issue. The issue is not that women don't understand this intellectually. We get it. Returns time. Yes, great. The issue is that we wait to start. We're going to start when we feel ready, when we've learned more, when we have a better handle on all of this, when we can afford to put in a bigger amount, when the market does something predictable, which by the way is never. And the cost of waiting is not just the money you didn't invest, it is the years the money didn't have the time to compound. Compounding rewards the woman who starts before she feels sophisticated. Not the woman who has the most knowledge, not the woman who times the market or waited until she had the perfect plan. It's just the woman who started consistently, even with small amounts, even without understanding every equation or detail. This specific version that I want you to think about, consistent monthly and reinvested dividends, maybe rental income that funds the next asset, business profit that gets redirected into something instead of something depreciating, interest earned instead of interest paid. Any of those count, pick one. Now, multiplier 2 is leverage. I want to be careful with this one because leverage can get a bad reputation in certain circles, and I understand why. When people leverage recklessly, it does create serious problems. So I'm going to be clear about what I mean, because leverage is my favorite. It is using something you already have to access or create something larger. That might mean capital. It might mean credit. It might mean equity in a property. It might mean expertise. It might mean your network or your brand or a business asset or a self-directed retirement account. Leverage isn't automatically debt, and debt is not automatically bad. Bad leverage creates pressure. Strategic leverage creates expansion. So here's the question that separates the two. Bad leverage asks, can I afford the payment? Strategic leverage asks, what does this create, and does the return justify the cost? So let's talk about some practical versions of this. Using business credit so that you are not personally funding every business expense and taking a cash flow hit every time you have to buy equipment or inventory or invest in growth. Using a self-direct investment account to access alternative investments that your regular brokerage would never offer you. Using the equity in one property to acquire a second one. I've done this so many times. So that first asset is helping you build the second. Using your profitable business to fund assets outside of the business, so you're not entirely dependent on that business for your financial future. Maybe using expertise to create intellectual property or licensing opportunities that pay you without requiring your time every single time. Using a community to access deals and knowledge and conversations that you wouldn't find on your own. You see, the wealthy, they don't just ask, what can I afford? They ask, what can I leverage responsibly? That is the shift. Multiplier number 3 is tax strategy. This one is a personal hobby horse, and I will try not to get carried away, no promises. But taxes are one of the biggest wealth leaks for entrepreneurs and investors. And most people, they're not doing tax strategy. They are doing tax reporting. And I want to say that clearly. This is not to insult your CPA. Compliance matters. Filing correctly matters. Paying what you owe matters. But compliance is not strategy. Your CPA's job is to accurately report what happened. Tax strategy is about deciding what happens in a way that is smart. Those are two different conversations. Tax strategy asks different questions. What entity structure makes sense given where I am right now and where I'm going? What deductions am I missing because nobody thought to ask about them? What timing decisions matter this year versus next year? Should income be shifted, deferred, accelerated, or sheltered? Are my assets being held in the most tax efficient structure possible? That's huge. Am I building wealth inside the most expensive structure I could have chosen? Like that last one is where I've seen real money left on the table, entrepreneurs especially. The structure that made sense when you started, it might be costing you significantly now that you're generating real profit. And maybe nobody told you to revisit it, so you never did. And here's the line I want you to hold on to. You do not multiply wealth only by making more. You multiply by keeping more of what already belongs to you. If you've not had a tax strategy conversation, not a compliance conversation, a strategy conversation, that is worth putting on the calendar before the end of this month. Number 4, network. And I say this as someone who used to think networking was just an extrovert's sport. I hated it. But a lot of multiplication happens through access to better conversations, better questions, people who already know what you're trying to learn, to deals you would never find alone, to strategy before you might make an expensive mistake. And I want to be specific about what I mean by this, because I'm not talking about collecting business cards at a conference and hoping something magical happens. That is not a network, that is a list. I'm talking about positioning yourself in rooms where ownership is normal, where people talk about capital and deal structure and risk tolerance and equity and tax efficiency and long-term wealth strategy. It belongs in the conversation because it does. I referenced this in the ownership episode, Get in the Room. Not a metaphorical room, an actual room, online or in person, somewhere that the people around you are solving these types of problems, ownership and multiplication, not just earning problems, because here's what happens when every room you're in is about making more money. You keep solving the earning problem. You get really good at the earning problem, and you still do not build wealth because earning more was never the issue. You need rooms where the conversation has already moved past earning. If you're listening to this and you don't have the room yet, we'll learn more about that at the end of the episode. But first, I want to talk about what happened when you have assets, but you have no strategy. So real talk. One of the most common things that I see is just this random investing. A little crypto because someone said it was early, a rental property because everyone says real estate is always good and you just happen to sell one and keep one, or buy one and keep one. A retirement account from a job that you left 4 years ago that nobody's looked at since. Maybe a private deal because you trusted the friend that presented it. A life insurance policy that got explained to you once and you nodded and never did anything with it. A business that you have that produces revenue but has no transferable value if you were to ever sell it. None of those things. They are automatically bad. I want to be clear. Any of those could be a really smart move inside of a thoughtful strategy. But the issue isn't the individual thing. The issue is that they are disconnected. There is no thesis holding them together, no order of operations, no risk framework, no liquidity plan, or those taxes. There's no coordination. We need a clear role that each piece plays in a larger picture. And when I ask women to walk me through their assets, sometimes what I get is a tour of good intentions. This felt right at the time. Someone I trusted recommended this. I meant to revisit this one. Oh, I totally forgot about this until just now. That is not a wealth plan, that is a collection. Random assets don't make a good portfolio. A portfolio has a job. So what is the job? There are 5 roles that an asset can play, and I want you to think about your own assets as I walk through these. There's cash flow. The assets produce income, a rental property, a dividend-paying investment, a business with profit distribution. These cash flow assets are the ones that pay you regularly, that give you money to live on or reinvest without having to sell anything. You've got appreciation. The asset grows in value over time. Real estate in the right market. Equities over the long term, like business equity, appreciation assets. These build wealth slowly but significantly, and the payoff is usually on the back end when you sell. You don't get regular payments. Tax efficiency. Now this is a retirement account that maybe defers taxes, a structure that shelters income, an investment that generates losses to offset gains. They're often doing invisible work that most people don't see or quantify. Number 4 is liquidity. The asset gives you money, access to it when you need it. That's cash, that's a brokerage account, that's something you can sell or borrow against relatively quickly without a huge catastrophic loss. Liquidity is the thing that people ignore until they desperately need it and do not have it. And number 5 is legacy or transfer. The asset can be passed on, sold, or used to create long-term family wealth. This is properly structured life insurance, a business with real transferable value. Real estate held in an entity with an estate plan. These assets play a longer game than you might be thinking about right now. But here's what I want you to understand. Not every asset has to do every job. That's not the goal. A rental property doesn't also have to be your most liquid asset. A retirement account doesn't also have to be a short-term cash flow vehicle. Different assets have different jobs, but you need to know what job each one is doing. If everything you own is not liquid, meaning you can't get anything out of it, that's a problem. When an opportunity or an emergency arrives, that means you can't move. But if everything you own is sitting in cash, that's a problem. Cash is not an asset strategy. Cash is a parking space. If everything depends on the market going up, that's a problem because markets don't always go up. Sometimes they go sideways for a long time. And if you're like me, you're not 30 years old anymore. If everything depends on you continuing to work, that's a problem because what you're building is not wealth. What you're building is a job with no days off. Multiplication comes from coordination, from knowing what each piece is doing and making sure the pieces are covering each other. So this is the most important shift I want you to make from the whole episode, maybe from the whole series. The beginner question, and I say beginner with zero judgment because we all start here, is what should I invest in? It's not a bad question, but it is incomplete because it's focused on the asset before the strategy. It's like asking, what car should I buy? Before you've decided whether you need to haul lumber or do a daily commute or drive off-road. The answer depends entirely on the purpose. The better question is, what am I building? Am I building monthly income so that I have cash flow that doesn't depend on client work? Am I building long-term appreciation so I have something significant to access or sell in 15, 20 years? Am I building retirement optionality so I have real choices about when and how I stop working? Am I building a business I can actually sell, not just one that pays me while I run it? Am I building tax efficient wealth so I'm not handing over a third of everything I create to the IRS? Am I building family legacy so that what I build outlasts me in some form? Am I building freedom from client income so that my monthly life does not depend on other people's decisions? Am I building the ability to make different choices 5 years from now than the ones available to me today? Because the answer to that question changes the asset. It changes the order. It changes who you need around you. It changes what you say yes to and what you pass on. You see, the asset is not the strategy. The asset serves the strategy. I've seen women buy assets that were objectively good investments that any financial person would look at and say, yes, this makes sense. And they still did not move the needle on the wealth picture because the asset did not fit the strategy, or more accurately, because there was no strategy for it to fit. So don't let that be you. All right, now this is the homework section, and I know maybe you're in your car, maybe you're on a walk, and you're thinking, I should probably pull over and write this down. You should probably pull over and write this down. Now, this is what I call the multiply audit. I've got 4 questions, and we're going to go through them right now together. If you need to come back to it, do it. If you've never done this kind of inventory before, I want to normalize the fact that what you find might surprise you. That is fine. Information is not failure. Information is just information. So question 1, what do you already own? Seriously, list every business equity, even if it feels unquantifiable right now. The business is an asset. Any retirement accounts, including the one job you left in 2019 that you have thought about rolling over approximately 40 times and never done. Any brokerage accounts, even the one with $800 in it from when you thought you were going to get into trading and then life happened. Real estate, your primary home, It counts as an asset even if you don't think of it that way. Any investment properties, any land, anything, cash reserves. This is what you have sitting in a savings account, high yield account, whatever. Any insurance policies with cash value. Some of you have one of these and have genuinely forgotten what it does. Any private investments, any that you put money into that is not publicly traded. Intellectual property, digital products. Do you have courses, licensing deals, anything you own that can produce income? Now, receivables. Do you have someone that owes you money? That is technically an asset. Write it all down. Even the things you're not sure about. Even the things that you think don't count. Because we're building the picture before we evaluate it. Question 2. What is each asset's job? Go back through the list. For each item, assign it a role. This is for cash flow. This is for appreciation, taxes, liquidity, legacy. If you don't know the job right, I don't know. It's not a failure, it's just data. If you're unclear, that is exactly a very useful answer because it tells you exactly where attention is needed. If you have assets and you can't name what they're doing, they are probably not doing much. Question number 3. What is not multiplying yet? This is where you get honest. Where is money sitting idle? Where is an asset underused? A property not generating income, a retirement account that hasn't been looked at or rebalanced in years, a business that has real equity but no plan for what happens to that equity. Where is cash flow coming in but not being redirected to anything? Where are you holding something that you don't fully understand and maybe have been meaning to look into? Where are taxes eating too much of what you create because that structure wasn't optimized? Write down what's not working, not as a judgment, but as a list of opportunities. Question 4, what's your next multiplier move? Choose one, not 3, not a full overhaul, just one. Maybe it is rolling over that old retirement account, so it's actually in something that makes sense for where you are now. Maybe it's opening a brokerage account and setting an automatic monthly contribution so that compounding has a starting point. Maybe it is getting a tax strategy review, not a compliance appointment, an actual strategy conversation. Maybe it's creating a profit account inside your business, a separate account that is specifically for funding your assets so business profit doesn't just disappear into operations. Maybe it's getting into a room where people are talking about the stuff we talked about today, deals and wealth and real strategy. Maybe it's looking at your business structure and asking whether what you have built is sellable, not just operational. Maybe it's getting on a call to look at everything together so you stop figuring this out in pieces. One move, one thing that is more coordinated than what you're doing now. That's just how it starts. So here's what I want you to take away from this entire series. The goal was never just to make more money. Yes, more money is useful. I am absolutely not pretending that it is not. If someone offers me more money, I am taking it. But more money by itself is not the goal because more money without structure disappears. More money without control creates anxiety. More money without ownership keeps you working forever. And more money without multiplication does not become wealth, it becomes a lifestyle. That is the full framework. Earn, control, own, multiply. Income becomes intentional. Cash flow becomes directed. Assets become position, and position becomes power. Not power over other people, power over your own choices. The power to stop building for survival. The power to stop starting over every month. The power to stop confusing revenue with wealth. The power to build something that doesn't require your constant labor to exist. That is what it means to move from paychecks to portfolios. That is what it means to expand your empire. And for the women who have been listening to this whole series and thinking, where do I actually start? The answer is not later. The answer is not when you feel more ready or know more or make more. The answer is one move taken right now in the right direction. So let's talk about what that looks like. I've given you 3 resources. Depending on where you are right now, one of these is probably right for you. If you are still in the building foundation, if what stood out most in this series is that you realize that you don't fully understand the landscape yet, these asset classes that I'm talking about, this vocabulary, how any of this actually works in practice, start with Investing 101. That course was built specifically for the woman who is smart, capable, motivated, and tired of feeling like investing was designed for someone else. Someone with more math skills, someone with a different background, or someone who already knows all of this, because you are not behind. You are starting, and that is enough. If what you need is a room, if what hit today was the network conversations, the rooms, the proximity, the access, that idea that you need to be around people who are already solving ownership and multiplication problems rather than just the earning problem, that is what the American Dream Group is. The American Dream Group is no longer just earning a paycheck. This group is where we talk about wealth, investing, business, capital, real estate, and strategy in a way that is practical and is grounded and does not require you to pretend that things that you don't. So you can come in and start learning in real time with real people. Now, if you already have assets, if you have things, retirement accounts or real estate or business income, if you have cash sitting in places or investments, those ones that you haven't reviewed in a while, and you're listening to this and you're thinking, I actually think I need someone to look at the whole picture with me, that is the wealth strategy call. That is where we look at what you own, what it is doing, where you are trying to go, and what needs to be coordinated. So your money is actually moving towards something instead of just sitting there or leaking out without a plan. You don't need to have everything figured out before you book the call. That is literally what the call is for. So links to all 3 are in the show notes. I have built this entire series, I've built this entire podcast, I've built this entire platform because I believe that all of this information is in too many different places and we don't have access and we don't feel qualified to get it. So I wanted to bring it all together in one place for as many people as want to have it. So that is what I'm here. I want us all to move from paychecks to portfolios. Thank you for being here for all of it. Now go do your audit, and I will see you next time. Until then, keep building.
If this lit something up, share it, review it, and get in the room. Join the Expand Your Empire community and start turning wisdom into wealth. You're not too late, and you're not doing this alone.